What I found quite interesting over the last week or so is community development projects who are concerned at their future at the moment, saying to me that they do not trust the partnerships in the process of representation. And I think if you go back 15, 20 years to when the partnerships were set up, they were set up to interact directly with the community in many respects. So I think we have to take a long, hard look at the bodies that we set up to interact more closely with communities and think again as to whether they are carrying out their remit.
Gordon Healy from Irish Equality. I just come back to Deputy Scott's comment earlier on about being a party that are, committed to safeguarding equality. They just asked Deputy Scott if he can explain to us what is the extent. We've heard 43% of the budget cut to the Equality Authority, 25% almost cut to the Human Rights Commission. I suppose you are the junior party in government, and most people would like to know today is, what is the extent, to what level of cuts is the Green Party going to go along with your partners before you refine your commitment that you stated here today? Because it's really becoming very evident to those of us who are watching you in government that you are now being party to what will be the dismantling of an equality infrastructure that we did have pride in when it was put together over the last 10 years. But you're actually in partnership with this dismantling, and how you're going to explain that to your children, I think will be a huge challenge, as it is a challenge to all of us today to understand how you can be doing it as the Green Party in government.
I already am explaining it to my children. The biggest crisis that we have in Ireland at the moment is that we are spending 58 billion a year and we're only bringing in 34 billion. If we want Ireland to remain solvent, to create jobs, to get us out of the mess we're in, we have to get our finances in order. I completely agree with you. If you let me finish, I'll let you finish. I completely agree with you that the cuts that we've seen to equality agencies have gone beyond what we want to see. And we are moving to changing that. But obviously, as a partner in government, we don't have privy to every budget and to every budget line, and we can't control every budget line in government.
But is that, are we expecting some change? Because skewing the very trajectory of the equality agenda is how many people, and this report has deemed those cuts of just a year ago. Are you saying we're going to have some redress, some pulling back in the next month when we hear the budget this time?
I'm not privy to the pre-budget figures in a detailed level.
No, but your party has done more. Your party has had more leverage on this issue. Sorry, Kieran, I'm asking you a question. Your party has had more leverage on this issue than most junior partners in government, because your very remaining in became part of a delegate conference in the midterm of the government just a few weeks ago. So surely you must know whether this is going to make changes or not.
I can say that we're working as hard as we can to protect issues that are fundamental to Green Party thinking, and equality is one of them. Over the last year, there has been a huge amount of time and effort put into the equality agenda, put into safeguarding social welfare from being cut last year, and to trying to protect overseas development aid. And
yeah, but working
there
as
is
hard
a limit
as you
to
can.
what we can do.
I've
There
no
is a
doubt
limit
that
to what we can do.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to realise.
But is there a limit to what you can take, as it were? Is there some?
Well, there is a limit to what we can take, and there is a limit to what we can achieve. We have 6 TDs. Fianna Fáil have, I think, 79 the last time I looked. You've got to realise how much clout we do have and don't.
You're totally clout. The parties are interdependent.
I think it would be naive to suggest that the Greens can control every tranche of funding in every government department.
No, I know that, but you can walk out of government and the government's gone. So you've that leverage. You've whipped 6 people, and the government is dependent on those 6.
No, we always have that. We always have that. Or we have had that since the last year and a half, since the majority changed within the Oireachtas.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I'm John Baker from the UCD School of Social Justice. We are in the middle of a massive economic crisis that has exposed the huge material inequalities in Irish society and the power of the rich to dictate public policy. And what I'd like to ask is whether any of your parties are committed to a substantial permanent change in the scale of economic inequality in Ireland, and if not, why not?
To give you my straight up opinion, I was a city councillor representing this area, the South Inner City, for 11 years, from 1991 to 2002. In 1991, if you went into School Street Flats, if you went into Fatima Mansions, into Dolphin House, into Oliver Bond, you would have found unemployment rates of 70 to 80%. It's an awful lot less than that now. And I think the economic development of Ireland over the last 15 years has allowed a huge amount of people to come out of poverty. And I think the programs that were set up, the kind of programs that allowed, that permitted women I know to go to college in their 30s and 40s, which would have been unthinkable in the 1980s. Those were the kind of policies that were brought in over the 90s and into the noughties. So I think it's incorrect. Your assumption is incorrect. I think there has been greater access to coming out of poverty in the last 10 or 20 years than there was in that period before that. I think
between poverty and inequality.
I think there has been more people. There has been greater equality for many of those people than would have been thought possible prior to that. And I think, you know, we can have as many state programs as we want, but you've got to measure the level of equality in a society by the ability of people to move within that society. And I've seen more movement during my period in public life than I had seen prior to that. And look, we can look at figures and we can come back to that.
Yes, well, I think the Labour Party would be very much directed towards eliminating inequality and poverty in Irish society. We did set up the Combat Poverty Agency originally in the 1970s. We introduced the free education in the 1990s. And
that generally helped middle classes.
Well, that isn't true. That isn't true, John. When the examination of what was happening at the time meant that you could have a strong farmer, or you could have a pub proprietor getting free fees and a labourer or a barman not able to get it because they were paying PAYE because of the structure. And in actual fact, when it was introduced, it cost the state 15 million at the time because there were so many mechanisms for avoiding paying fees at that time, and it was virtually impossible to monitor them all. But it has made a difference. Where I represent, and I see people from places like the Larkin Community College going to third level for the first time. That's number one.
So same spend focused on the poorest would have a much bigger impact. The middle classes have managed to escape and are now spending that money at second level.
Well, the threat, the approach that we take at the present time, as I outlined very briefly, was that we have a recession at the moment. And we can argue forever over what caused that recession. But that cuts, where they do take place, they should be fair and equitable. And that's what didn't happen in relation to the Equality Authority. 43% cut and immediate decentralisation, even though decentralisation has gone by the board. That was vindictive. That was not fair and equitable. And likewise, in relation to the approach to the budget, it should be from the top down. Those who can afford to pay most will pay most, rather than what has been happening all along the line from the bottom.